When people call Berserk a love story, this isn't what they mean, but they might as well, given how many people believe it to be a fact. From the onset, it's clear that Griffith has a certain fondness for Guts. He immediately takes a liking to the hulking swordsman and personally recruits him into the band of the Falcon. Griffith places more implicit trust in Guts, the latest member of his party, than tenured soldiers who have been in his service for years. He draws up battle plans to include Guts' unpredictable nature, and even goes out of his way to save the guy from a literal monster like Zod. Many in the Berserk fandom believe these acts, and many others, to mean Griffith was in love with Guts. But is that true? Was Griffith actually in love with the guy he ended up blaming all of his personal shortcomings on? Did he do what he did to Guts and Casca out of a sick, twisted sense of jealousy? That's exactly what we're here to investigate. He does care for Guts more than his average soldiers. Griffith's unusual treatment of Guts. If you were to take Griffith's actions and words on a surface level, it wouldn't surprise us if you too concluded that he was in love with Guts, because he does care for him more than his average soldiers. From the moment they met, it's been clear that Griffith is interested in Guts. Even though he doesn't hesitate to land a near-fatal blow on him to protect his comrades, Griffith recognizes Guts' strength and insane drive to win at all costs, something he identifies with as a person fixated on acquiring his own dream. And after watching him slay Bazuso, a guy who had killed 30 men in a single encounter and was one of Griffith's most feared soldiers, the White Falcon knew he'd found a replacement that was at least 3 times better than Bazuso. To that end, he personally recruits Guts into the band of the Falcon by defeating him in a one-on-one duel where Griffith nonchalantly dislocates Guts' sword hand from its shoulder socket. After that, he takes Guts' face into his hands and declares that Guts is now his, a statement that makes Casca hot-headed and red-faced because apparently he'd never said anything like that to anyone. Once Griffith enlists Guts, he immediately starts showering him with trust and attention. His first job for his new man is to be the rear guard of their raiding party, a job that is usually only given to those a leader can implicitly place his faith in. Guts excels, of course, but is nearly captured by the enemy as he nears the rendezvous point. This is where Griffith commits his first act of love, by riding out to save Guts himself. Even his men take note of the fact that Griffith has lost his composure somewhat at the mere thought of losing Guts, and when the White Falcon does show up to save our boy, he does so in such White Knight fashion that it almost makes Guts look like a damsel in distress, which is crazy considering he's the feared Black Swordsman. The morning after this fight, Griffith invites Guts for a morning bath, and the two duke it out in a water war. Guts' stubborn drive to win makes Griffith give up and admit defeat, and in the aftermath, the White Falcon discusses his true ambitions with his newest recruit. Griffith seems so large when he declares he'll have his kingdom and that he will decide where Guts dies that you forget he's the same dude that gives Guts generational trauma a few years down the line. But that's Griffith, baby. In the aftermath of this bath of initiation, Griffith immediately puts 10 men under Guts' command and over the course of the next 3 years utilizes his best soldiers' monstrous battle prowess to the best of his abilities. Griffith goes out of his way to account for Guts' unpredictable nature on the field of battle and often overlooks his command chain transgressions, which pisses off Casca something proper and makes the rest of the band think Guts is his favorite. This statement is probably true as well, because when the band of the Falcon comes up against Nosferatu's Zod, Griffith jumps into the fray to save Guts without even thinking about the possible demise of his dream and ends up telling him that he doesn't need a reason to save him later. The White Falcon constantly relies on Guts to do his dirtiest work, like assassinating Julius and aiding him in kidnapping Minister Foss's daughter because he thinks that no one else will get his methods and motives. It's evident that he does think Guts is special, so it's easy to misconstrue this with emotional love when Griffith is left broken by Guts' departure that snowy morning. After achieving pretty much everything he wanted to with the help of Guts' sword, Griffith couldn't believe Guts wanted to leave him. He decided if he can't have him, then no one can, and lunged at his best soldier with killing intent. Guts smashed his sword in twain with a single strike of his own, and left Griffith groveling in despair. The White Falcon ended up seducing Princess Charlotte to cope with the loss of Guts, but even as he was coupling with her, all he could think about was Guts. The final set of internal thoughts we get to see from Griffith's perspective are him lingering over Guts' departure. So, once again, we understand where people get this idea that he loved Guts, but the scene that probably cements this idea for them is also the scene that completely disproves it in our perspective. So, let's dive into that. He blames Guts for all of his misfortunes, even those of his own creation. Griffith's toxic admission of love. Miura-sensei was very careful with giving us Griffith's internal dialogue because he knew that this guy was going to be his main villain early on. In interviews he gave after the Millennium Falcon arc's conclusion, he explicitly stated that he avoids giving Griffith's thoughts on any matter, choosing to show the reactions of the people around him instead, so as to leave his character more ambiguous. This is why when we do get internal dialogue, or any kind of dialogue from Griffith, it's very important to take proper note of what he's actually saying. The scene that solidifies this idea that Griffith loves Guts in a romantic fashion is one that also comes at his lowest point in life, and we're talking physically, mentally, and emotionally. In chapter 49, Griffith recounts his childhood dream while lying on the floor of his prison cell, a broken husk of a man. He has endured an entire calendar year's worth of torture, and he himself questions his own sanity. Right after doing so, he dives into the only reason he's even conscious in the first place, and that is Guts. Griffith thinks to himself that the only light keeping him alive in the darkness of his torture chamber was Guts, and so many conflicting feelings rise up inside of him at the thought of that man. Malice, jealousy, friendship, futility, regret, tenderness, sorrow, pain, hunger, a maelstrom of emotions where nothing is defined, but everything is implied. It is this bond he has with Guts that keeps him from going completely crazy. But you have to remember, these are the thoughts of a man trying to deny his insanity. Griffith has always known he has a striking effect on anyone he meets, and that effect either snowballs into friendship and admiration or enmity and malice. He is aware of this, and that is how he grasped the world with his hands. But somehow, he has allowed Guts to have a stronger hold on him. And now, that man's visage burns brighter in Griffith's mind than his own dream. He cries out Guts' name just before a brick falls into his cell and demonic creatures spawn from within it, calling Griffith the one thing he's always wanted to become, a prince. People tend to think that just because Guts was the one who made Griffith forget about his dream, that means he made the White Falcon fall in love with him. But that couldn't be further from the truth. Griffith doesn't love anyone or anything beyond his own dream. He is one of the most selfish characters in Berserk, who doesn't even feel accountable for the deaths of the men he leads into battle. He's so consumed by his dream that he thinks a true friend is only someone who can dream and fight on his level, and in that stream of consciousness, he forgets that he already has a best friend in Guts. He realizes this only when Guts leaves, which is why that torrent of emotions rises up within him. Out of every emotion Miura listed Griffith feeling in his dank cellar as he thought about the man who made him lose it all, people focus on friendship and tenderness as justifications for the Griffith loves Guts theory. They often forget the 7 other negative emotions he associates with Guts. Malice, because Guts made him forget about his dream by just being himself. Jealousy, at Guts' ability to leave his grasp so easily when he thought he had the world in his hands. Futility, at not having been able to change his mind about leaving the Band of the Falcon. Regret at his departure, and Griffith's own failure to prevent it. Sorrow at realizing too late that he had a friend, and pain, not just from that loss, but also the torture that had numbed his body to the point that Griffith thought he was in suspended animation. All of these emotions are in service of one thing, and that is the disservice Griffith did to his dream by allowing Guts to essentially become the only person he ever actually cared for. Griffith's love for Guts is not romantic or even platonic, it is an unrealized, self-serving vacuum of emotional turmoil, where Guts is both the inflictor of his pain and his liberator. Hate and love might be two sides of the same coin, but it's very clear that in the case of Griffith's emotions towards Guts, it skews to the former. The first thing he does when Guts arrives with the Griffith rescue team is to try and strangle him to death, and from that point onward, Griffith keeps a close eye on Guts' interactions with Casca, seething with jealousy that only becomes apparent because of Miura's exceptional drawing skills. Why does Griffith care that Guts and Casca are together and happy with each other? Is it because he loves one of them, or, as some people think, both? The answer is neither. He only cares about his power over other people, and the fact that his broken body was now making him lose it. If you go back and look at every interaction Griffith has ever had with Guts, you'll notice that he doesn't exactly like Guts as much as he relates to him, which, ironically enough, is what conversely makes him love the guy. When Griffith first proposed that Guts join his Band of the Falcon, he claimed that he did it because he found Guts' fighting style interesting. He had noticed that Guts didn't back down from fighting multiple opponents at once, and was surprised by his frank admission that he might have died in his fight with Bezuso had he not cracked the latter's battle axe first. Griffith thinks thinks that Guts fights like a man who has nothing to lose, yet with every swing of his sword he is clinging to life. He likes the fact that Guts would do anything to come out victorious, even flinging dirt in people's eyes mid-battle, because that's exactly what Griffith would do. When Griffith and Casca discuss his involvement with Genon, he states that while he doesn't feel any responsibility towards his fallen comrades, he knows that the only thing he can do to repay their sacrifices is to win. He is laser focused on winning, no matter the cost, just like Guts. So, in that moment, without even realizing it, Griffith had found his equal, and because of that, he ends up treating Guts like a friend. Griffith's relationship with Guts only becomes special when you see how he treats everyone else around him, but in isolation, how is it any different from any friendship taken to the extremes and put in a medieval setting? Would you not jump into the line of fire if your best friend was out there about to get pummeled by a literal lion monster? Would you not trust them with your darkest secrets? The only difference between you and Griffith is the latter's constant denial to even acknowledge his friendship with Guts. Kentaro Miura stated that his primary inspiration behind the conflict between Guts and Griffith was the idea of a hard falling out between friends, and once you think of it that way, it puts things into a better perspective. Griffith ends up twisting his friendship with Guts into the primary driving force behind his sacrifice to the idea of evil, and that's why we think people tend to misconstrue his emotions towards Guts with love of any kind. When Femto is incarnated into a body of flesh, the first thing he does is meet Guts to confirm whether his heart felt any emotion at his sight or not, and he was proven right, it didn't. This moment is taken by people as Griffith shedding his love for Guts, but that isn't exactly right. Griffith was just checking if he felt any emotions, period, at seeing the one person he could call his friend in his life as a human. When he didn't, he knew the eclipse had worked, and he was finally free of the burden of friendship. So yes, sure, in a way, Griffith loved Guts. He loved him as a friend would love another friend, which is to say they were ride or die bros. But no, he has never loved Guts romantically, even for a moment, because for Griffith, it's all about power. Every time we see him perform an act of intimacy, be it consensual or otherwise, it's always about power. His encounters with Genon were about getting more power to achieve his goals. His first time with Charlotte was all about reclaiming the power he thought he'd lost with Guts' departure. His violation of Casca was all about displaying his dominant power as a god hand and cementing it within the eyes of the man he blamed for falling off track. And his most recent encounter with Princess Charlotte was all about maintaining his power over her. Love and acts of love are not something we've seen Griffith do at all. So to make a long story short, the answer to the question, is Griffith in love with Guts, is a resounding no. Griffith only loves himself and his dream, and the fact that he started caring about someone else literally made him lose his mind and sacrifice his troops to become a demon. He heard evil spirits call him Prince once, and decided that that was what he was going to stake his life upon from that moment forward, not even stopping to think how his actions would affect the person he's been alleged to love since the beginning. And if that wasn't proof enough for you guys, then we don't know what will be. Marvelous verdict. But as for this video, that's about it. Griffith's relationship with Guts is so complex that we can honestly make an entire series just on that, but we thought we should give you guys our 2 cents on this entire theory. What do you guys think? Do you think Griffith was in love with Guts, or do you think people have it all wrong? Let us know in the comments section down below, and we'll see you guys soon.